Good morning, everyone. It's helpful to begin our session this morning by recalling the advent of something that's been called experimental architecture in China. Now, this was never a movement, and who belongs to the group it depends on who's writing about it. And I don't think it's a category that actually even is still in use, really to define any group. But the nomination is nevertheless important because it signals a new, what I would call a millennial ethos, and I'm talking about a lot of changes around the year 2000. It's not possible yet to adequately categorize or even characterize any common elements or opposing positions with any precision or detail, but the effort to do just that has begun. There's scholarship beginning, or has begun both in China and in the States. I have students myself starting to work on this era of China beginning in 1980s and going into the 90s and then the 2000s. So it's an effort has begun, and Tongji University has been a major support for this kind of scholarship, especially through the journal's first Time in Architecture, which already was documenting really a lot of the work, and now, of course, Perspectives in Architecture and Urbanism. This morning in this special session, we'll hear from three of the most important architects of what we might just call for now a post-millennial practice. Let me just briefly, I won't really introduce them. They are all very well known, but this we'll hear from Yung Ho Chang, who established the Graduate Center of Architecture at Peking University, and also was the first independent architecture studio in China. He established it with Li Jialu in 1993. He's currently professor of and dean of the Faculty of Architecture at University of Hong Kong. Just recently stepped into that position, and he's emeritus professor of MIT, where he chaired the architecture department from 2005 to 2010. I could go on, and I would lose all my time talking about the prizes and publications and things that all of these architects have accomplished. Second, we'll hear from today, Xingang Li is the founding principal of the firm, Xingang Li, Atelier Feichang Jianzhu, and an academician of the Chinese Academy of Engineering. He's, again, won many awards, but he's renowned, first of all, or early, for his design of the Yongqing venue for the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, and his role as the lead Chinese architect in collaboration of Herzog and Braun on the what we call the Bird's Nest, or the Beijing Olympic Stadium. Yichun Liu is the principal architect and co-founder. Oh, I was going to get you to remind me how to pronounce Dusau. Dusau. This is okay. To a Westerner, I know it looks like Bauhaus, but it doesn't sound like Bauhaus, which is, I think, part of the point. And I forgot to ask Yichun how to pronounce it. In any case, he's visiting professor now at Tongji University and Southeast University. He's lectured at many universities in many publications. I would say the most important thing is that he's going to be the Kenzo Tange professor this fall at Graduate School of Design at Harvard. If Trump doesn't stop him along the way. So let me suggest as a kind of provisional frame for thinking about, or I would say listening to and thinking about these presentations and these practices. I would suggest that we just remain roughly in the mode of yesterday, those of you who were here, and our discussions of materialism, memory, and I still want to keep the word inscription in play. Part of what I mean by that is the long-standing Chinese tradition that emphasizes, and this is ancient, the interconnectedness of calligraphy or poetry and painting, which both share the common techne of presentation through their use of ink, brush, and paper. And also an association, and this may or may not come up, with the so-called gongxi, if I'm saying that right, or scholar's rock, which often served the literati as a focus of meditation and a source of inspiration. I'm speaking mainly to younger students who, and certainly to my own students, who will not know of that tradition, but I think it's important to keep in mind. And also remember that the intellectual life of the literati is a peripatetic life. It involves motion and walking and going to the site and analyzing the site. And this, I think, will come up in different ways in the presentations. So this loose notion of material memory inscription is intended not only to organize, to help us begin to organize these practices, but also to enable us to set architecture in this larger structural field, in the structural field that includes calligraphy and painting. To speak of the architecture in this way is not just to talk about a graphic description. It's not just about writing. Rather, it is to see the world, the earth, the environment, all these unities that we are presently witnessing as being changed utterly, as effects of a complex system of relations among the arts, but within culture itself, that are multiple and accessible not just through pictures and images, but as deeper marks and traces where signification and materiality interact. And I think this is going to be a common theme, this interaction of materiality and signification that is also deeply rooted in history. I'd like to invite this to begin with Yung Ho coming to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for a very generous introduction. So I'll start right away since I have 20 minutes. So, let's see. I have to. Okay, I got it. So the first lesson is about design perspective. So as a student in Nanjing, studying under a sort of a Beaux-Arts system of education in late 70s, I learned doing perspective. And as you can, by hand. And what I didn't know was that actually linear perspective became a very important idea for me as an architect. I don't probably want to really unfold some of the ideas as I have been thinking on the line of a Chinese perspective and linear perspective, how they kind of informed each other, which was very interesting. But quickly, I wanted to point one point. Looking at this painting, I'm sure you have all seen it. It was done in the 1450s. The point I'd like to make here is that, in fact, linear perspective is an invention of the mankind. For the lay people, they wouldn't see it. It's not out there in the reality. Actually, it's out there. Of course, the magic was to spend time to achieve it. And I was very much interested in that. And I was interested in Saint Jerome, and he studied all that. Again, I wouldn't touch on them too much. So when I entered a competition in the early 90s, I actually just literally took the Antonello's painting and installed in an existing space. The perspective I use actually is not a one point, rather say a linear perspective, but a complex composition of not only perspectives, but also axonometrics. But the overall would appear to be more like a one-point perspective. And then I went on to try different ways. This is a design of a kindergarten in the early 90s. It wasn't built. This drawing shows how a person would move around 360 degrees around the building, and by having multiple one-point perspectives. And then in 2022, and we were able to half finish a building. It was never finished, but yet the basic structures was built. That's from the air. It got a name, and then we lost the content in the museum, and then it becomes no name. So it is about making a series of one-point perspective, but creating a very complex spatial and temporal experience that there's a tension rather between the linear perspective and the continuity of the temporal and spatial experience. So I just show you a couple of spaces, you will get the idea. So this is the overall, and then, for instance, see there's that building there and that space there. So that's the building on the street. It's very difficult to photograph them. They don't register in a photo. It's when you're there, you see it. So it seems much longer an elevation with the perspective, and it's much shortened the other way around. And then here is the same way. It's a wedge-shaped space. So perspective is exaggerated in one direction and actually weakened in the other. So that's the first lesson. So it is about the possibility to design or to reinvent perspective. The second one is about spatial structure. Actually, I would probably just use the word Parti. Parti came from the Beaux-Arts system, which suggested that an architect does not need to invent, in this case it's sort of an anti-invention, does not need to invent a space for every design project, but rather he or she could pick and choose from a menu. And there is a lexicon of basic structural, spatial structures that you can just pick the one you think would fit for a certain project. This is, of course, the work of Durand in the 19th century. I wanted to show you what I have chosen for some projects. In this case, is this one as well as that one. So that's a fairly recent project. And when I started, I was given this site in a park in Wuxi, which is not far from here, to design a pavilion. The function is like a tea house, otherwise it's pretty much open. And so I decided to try out this 9th grade. As you know, of course, I'm also very much influenced by the work of John Haydock. And however, I want to make the space that could go from 4 little rooms and open cool-form room to an interior space in the middle, and 4 underneath spaces at the corners. And so you can see it could transform from one space to another, actually many different renditions in the middle. and here is too. So because it's a pavilion in the park, so it can be fairly simple, of course, straightforward to take advantage of that Parti or spatial structure. And then for a building, I drew actually in 1991 and then built more than 30 years later, it was a house. The idea is that can a glass house have rooms? So, so that was a question. And here, of course, I was trying to suggest, yes, there is a wall, but the wall is a double layered glass curtain, meaning that it is a glass house that all the rooms are visible, but they are rooms nonetheless. It's not the Farnsworth's house or Philip Johnson's house. It's essentially a one-room house. So, and then I changed the plan a bit for the construction, and this is the built form. So looking up, it became 2 stories. On the lower floor, on the ground floor, there are studios, and then the house is on top. That's my my photographer here. In my younger days. I wish. So anyway, you can see, of course, the bathroom, the kitchen, and then the living room and the bedroom. So this sort of a 4-room house. And now, of course, the relationship between the structure, in this case, between structure actually and the glass enclosure is something I made an effort to make it totally separate. That's another thing. So a glass house with rooms and also glass house, you don't see the structure. Of course, the structure is in here. It's set back. So the corner of the house, there's no structure at all. So I didn't have to deal with the corner as, say, Philip Johnson did and some other architects did. So that's that. And then from the 9 square to a 4 square, the 4 square is being rotated in 45 degrees so that it creates a courtyard. And then the traditional Chinese courtyard, the one in Beijing, is like this, 4 rooms, disconnected, and with a courtyard in the middle. I grew up in a house like this. As an architect, I learned to really appreciate it in many ways. But as a resident in there, it's not really exactly convenient or comfortable when, especially in the winter or there's rain or snow. And then you have to every time come out to the house, to one room to get into another room. So when I had a commission to design a new courtyard house, so again I asked a question: how could I make courtyard living embracing courtyard more? I don't know, it sounds very rhetorical, but the idea is, can you possibly enjoy even more the courtyard than the traditional house? So that was the plan we came up with. It's a very narrow site. It's not a typical lot. It's smaller. And then the space around it, of course, becomes very, very narrow. But yet that gave us opportunity for the residents to be closer, or very close rather, to the courtyard. So, and then the house is in an area of historic preservation. So on top, that's how you see it, the courtyard and the more or less traditional roof. Actually, it's not entirely typical. And then once you're in the courtyard, you are in the glass house again. But this glass house is inverted from the again the classic modern ones. becomes, of course, inward looking onto a courtyard. And this is the kitchen. This is one of the wings. And with a breakfast space, because this is on the west wing, so you get sunlight in the morning. So the lifestyle is sort of around the house. So you end up in the southern side for dinner, and during the day you're on the other three sides. And this is from the north side looking into the east wing. So anyway, and then the idea of a courtyard, rather just remember that Parti, like basically a donut. So the house is called Loop House, and then we use that for some other projects. This is much bigger. This is an art center for a clothing, big clothing company, and then it's like one of Yichun's projects. When we got the commission, the foundation of these three sites were already completed with a basement. So we had to keep the foundation and do something on top. And then we added one wing, and this is the offices. This is the showroom and the art museum started to wrap around to create a courtyard in the middle. So that's how it look like in the middle. And then when you enter it, you enter at one corner. And then people always move under these big eaves. So speaking of big eaves, this one is all about that. First of all, I remember my student days, the professors loved to talk about semi-outdoor space, semi-indoor space. I just don't know what the difference between the two spaces are until today, but I'm a good student. I'm going to make it something that we can comprehend. So this is, of course, an outdoor space. That layer is indoor space. That's easy. The black space is air conditioned. And that layer is semi-outdoor. And then there's a huge canopy. And this is a semi-indoor, that's a semi-outdoor. So there are 4 layers, spaces, differentiated by the connection, or rather just say that the position is situated. And that's the entire project. Is a medical university. That's the International Exchange Center for the university. And then between the canopies, these big canopies, there always a gap. It's about 50 centimeters, so that it still has this particular kind of space I like to show you, still has this outdoor quality of it, while making a continuous a big roof for the entire complex. So you can see a bigger courtyard. And of course, the semi-indoor space are these, and this is the semi-outdoor. And narrow courtyard in the dormitory, or rather between the dormitory buildings, interior. And then the third one is actually about the classical approach to representation. So light is really rather the portrayal of light is a foundation of a realism, or realist art. Because of that, actually, light takes us, the architects, to the materiality. So I'm giving you one example. It's about brick. That's, as you can see, a classical, not a typical rendering, rather a pencil sketch done by an architect trained also in Nanjing in the Beaux-Arts system. The architect in this case was my dad, my father. And this is a huge governmental complex. It was built in Beijing. The material is the point here. It is brick. Although, of course, you can't be sure when you see a sketch like this, but it's in his mind. He's thinking of the old city wall and designing that building. And then this is my first design project at Nanjing Institute of Technology. Now it's called Southeast University. It's a post office, also a brick building. Of course, traditional rendering. I learned a bit of that myself. And this is a building my dad did. It's a high school in Chongqing. He was only 25, and he was because of the war. He was in Chongqing and designed this high school building. But the way that I just wanted to say one thing, actually, it's not about the appearance. He uses one wall in such a way that the thicker part is structured and the thinner part of the wall is the enclosure and with openings. It's actually beautifully designed in this kind of architectonic logic. And then here comes one of our projects. It's in Paris. It's the Maison de la Chine. What we are familiar with is this part. This is the Swiss house right there. And then they made these sports fields smaller and created 3 new sites. And China got the one in the middle, and then we won the competition to build it. And because in this case we have to express some cultural identity for China. It's the most official project we ever did. So we decided to use gray bricks. And this is from the prefab, and you see the building. And then the bricks, initially we thought could be a shift from Beijing and man-made clay bricks, and turned out it was difficult, and then COVID hit, and then eventually we used bricks from Germany, but it still is clay bricks, handmade. And then you see some of the details. And we just use the different way of laying the bricks as the cultural expressions. I downloaded some pictures from the internet, so I don't even know the photographer's name, but I thought it was a good one. And then you can see some of the details. This one is the Chinese way to do the cantilever. It's called 叠色. So that creates a eave, and so on. There are some different details. And inside of the courtyard. So anyway, and there's a newer project using brick. This time the inspiration is the Swedish architect Sigurd Leverentz. I'm a big fan of his work. I went to Klippan, a little town pretty far from Stockholm, to see the St. Peter's. So if you see similarities, there's direct borrowing to some extent. So this little pavilion is trying to make a huge cantilever with brick and concrete. You can see here, the really wide motor is to have rebars inside. It depends on the structural necessity. So the motor can be wider, can be narrower. And then from there, we got the project of the community center in this sort of a urban village. Really, it is what it is. And then we, first of all, I'm sorry, to make the building into a group of smaller ones. And then so it's part of this original or existing urban fabric. And then we made it very accessible because for us, this is the only public building in the urban village. The publicness should be announced architecturally. So in the end, what we did is to make this building, all the 5 floors can be accessed by this staircase. Now the building, is open 24 hours. Okay, so just some quick look. And we use, in this case, concrete bricks of 2 colors, gray ones and red ones. You see more red ones in these images, and then you see the mixed ones. And also we flipped the bricks straight up, and then you see all these new bricks got holes from 3 holes to 11 holes is to put rebars in. So, but we use it to give it a special texture. And then we also cut the bricks. So let me show you. Like this, so that you see another side of the bricks. How to turn the corner, how to make a very thin ledge, and so make the cantilever seems to be very light. Brick furniture, and so I still have one more project. I just go through it. The point is, not only brick, of course, materiality, or rather, this kind of a tangible world is such a rich, diverse place, and then almost anything out there could potentially be a material for architecture. Here, I'm actually using more plants as a building material, one of the building materials. This is an existing old village. We built an art center outside. So I'm just going to focus on, I think that's the alarm, right? Okay. So you see, of course, concrete. Okay. I feel a little better. And then the tiles on the roof now is in the wall, and we use a lot of small wooden frame for the concrete, so you can see the tiles and the bricks, more bricks, and here is all the water lilies on the roof. The reason we put water lilies on the roof because they were on the ground. We built in a water lily pond, so we wanted to give the water lilies back to this site, and other plants, of course, material shadows. This one is for colleagues from GSD. You probably recognize either one of them or both. This is Mark and Clover Lee. They are having fun in the exhibition I curated with a French colleague as well as designing it. We put the architectural drawings of the Giacometti's studio on the wall. So I don't know how many people got it, probably with Mark and Clover. So to end, and of course, I was talking about light and materiality, and of course, light changes. Really, it is something that architects loves, and every one of us appreciates every time when sun comes out. It's this tremendous experience to make this talk is, or rather our practice, not only for a few, but really for all. Thank you.